Since we last spoke, we thought by the time we meet again, your party will have a new branded name, but it seems like, are they still pondering on a name?
I think when you look at what Jeremy Corbyn has said, this is a grassroots political movement, and as bizarre as it may sound,
Even big political parties like Labour started off as a grassroots movement, as you know. But somewhere along the lines, like the period they're probably in now, it seems like they no longer represent those grassroots people that actually put them in that position in the first place. What went wrong there, do you think?
if you look at what Labour stands for at present, what you realise is that every single policy that they are pushing through is a top-down approach. It's almost like looking at what do we need to save, how can we save it, how can we implement a particular policy.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. We have joined once again by our distinguished guest, Ayoub Khan MP, the independent MP who has now joined forces with Jeremy Corbyn, who's joined forces with Zara Sultana to form a new party called Your Party, which is taking on the establishment. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to our program.
Islam, it's always been a pleasure to come and see you, but also be on this podcast.
Since we last spoke, we thought by the time we meet again, your party will have a new branded name, but it seems like, are they still pondering on a name?
I think when you look at what Jeremy Corbyn has said, this is a grassroots political movement, and as bizarre as it may sound, what we're doing is giving the membership the right to determine what the party name should be. And I think it's the right thing to do. Ultimately, if this is a grassroots movement, you allow the members to participate with even the minutiae of detail. And if they want to keep it as your party or anything else, that'll be decided towards the end of November.
Even big political parties like Labour started off as a grassroots movement, as you know. But somewhere along the lines, like the period they're probably in now, it seems like they no longer represent those grassroots people that actually put them in that position in the first place. What went wrong there, do you think?
If you look at what Labour stands for at present, what you realise is that every single policy that they are pushing through is a top-down approach. It's almost like looking at what do we need to save, how can we save it, how can we implement a particular policy. We know that Nigel Farage and his movement is pushing forward a narrative that is a far-right narrative as far as I'm concerned. They say jump, the Conservatives say how high, and then followed behind with Labour. And that, for example, when you look at ID cards, forcing through a national ID card, where's the consultation? Where's the conferences? Why was that announced when we were on recess? When you look at Shabana Mahmood, the indefinite leave to remain, increasing that to 10 years before you can apply for indefinite status, where was the consultation behind that?
Yeah, but who are you expecting them to consult with? They're going to say, we're in government, we've got the majority of the seats, so why should they be consulting you independent MPs?
And don't even consult independent MPs, but that's the arrogance. That comes back down to, if you are a grassroots movement, then you engage the people on the ground. You look at your policies, they are driven from the community to politicians. And the politicians there essentially, are the people that make the checks and balances as to whether or not this policy can work, what are the benefits, what are the disadvantages. If you look at Nigel Farage and Reform, they're pushing forward the migration issue. 3% is unauthorized migration, 3 to 4%. Yet 97, 98% of the media, whether it's mainstream media, social media, it's about illegal migrants, as though this country has been invaded from...
It's been swamped by...
Absolutely. And it's outrageous that when you look at the unauthorized migration, which is 3 to 4%, that Shabana...
As opposed to the 96, 97% who come legally through normal legal channels.
Absolutely. And, we've got Brexit propaganda 2.0, which is taking place out there. And this propaganda is being allowed to fester on mainstream media and social media. 96% of migration is legal, where people are invited to come to the UK, whether they're students, which give us enormous income in terms of local towns and cities and universities. We've got people that provide care services for our aging communities. NHS, you name it. There is legitimate migration, which is being portrayed as illegitimate. And I don't understand Shabana Mahmood's 10-year indefinite leave plan and how that's going to address the 3 to 4% unauthorized migration, because the 10-year
doesn't apply to them anyway.
It doesn't apply to them in any event because they're here legally. So Labour has lost its way, and they are trying to appease and jump to the tunes of Nigel Farage, and I think that shows the level of arrogance in terms of them being in a position to push forward their agenda without real consultation with the communities. And that's where Your Party, the name may change towards the end of November. That's why we believe that this new movement is necessary. It's the only political party that doesn't want to have large donors. You've got Labour, Conservatives and Reform, they have millionaires donating to them. And I will often ask the question, if someone's going to give your political party £10 million, do you really think that person or that business is not going to ask for a favour? So we want to be representing the majority, not the few.
But how is that going anyway in terms of getting financial donations from grassroots members?
Well, we're doing really well. We had more than 800,000 subscriptions. Of course, they were free, but we still had people donating. And we've now got paid-up membership. I haven't got the exact figures to hand, but they're certainly in the tens of thousands. So this movement will, it's an organic movement which will grow. And I'm confident that by the time we get to certainly the next local elections, we would have had sufficient movement, sufficient airtime, because, as you know, mainstream media are more interested in political figures that seem to be controversial than they are with those that have balanced views.
I mean, that does seem very unfair, and I've obviously observed with many other people that the likes of Reform do get a lot more airtime, even though politically they're the same size as yourself in terms of the number of seats in the House of Commons. Your alliance has the same as Reform, or similar. So they get far more. I mean, how many times has Jeremy Corbyn invited to BBC's Question Time compared to the leader of Reform?
Yeah, and I suppose that's one of the matters that could be taken up by your viewers, no doubt, to send in emails, complain to BBC, to other broadcast, Sky, and say that why is there disparity? You should have Jeremy Corbyn and others on.
Look, we're not naive. We know there's always, when there's an agenda, it needs to be pushed. Then certain individuals will be, touted and brought forward in front of the cameras more often than others. So, but going back, see, you're doing that as well, if you don't mind me saying. You've spoken more about Nigel Farage in the last few sort of minutes than any other politician. So I see that obsession with Nigel Farage when I hear other political interviews. Even Labour Party conference was dominated by Reform and Nigel Farage, even though they weren't there, but it seems like they were given all this PR and advertising free of charge on Labour's own platform. So why is there this, is it a knee-jerk reaction, or is this a reaction to a rise of Reform? Or are we fueling this ourselves by giving them this so-called airtime and mentioning them in so many words?
I think if you look at what took place in London, the march and demonstration, which was Tommy Robinson's new, baby, if you like, you saw hundreds of thousands of people turn up to that march. I think it was probably about 150,000.
I think that number was exaggerated.
Yeah, it may have been 110,000. I think there is all sorts of
figures out there.
Yeah, figures. 3 million is what Tommy Robinson said, which is absolute nonsense. But somebody's been doing some mapping exercises, and there's a good TikTok video which shows that there was no more than 110,000. You can do so much with AI these days. But It's important to realize that, yes, there were many people that attended that march that were blatantly racist. I mean, I think that famous YouTuber Nico,
Yeah.
exposed.
He exposed it.
He exposed it.
And then he also said there was no way there's 100,000 people at the march, because he was right in the midst of that march.
Yeah, absolutely. But there were many individuals that you saw at that protest march, families included. And so, from my perspective, I'm thinking about why are people which on the face of it have no racism marching with Tommy Robinson? What's the attraction? What's the magnet? And then you had the vile people on the stage, which were clearly, in my view, inciting racial and religious hatred. And they should have been arrested. And why they haven't been arrested is another question.
Elon Musk?
Yeah, Elon Musk, if he ever touches foot on the UK soil, he should be arrested. But also the people that were on the stage. There was some... one of the speakers was referring to getting rid of all mosques, all temples, gurdwaras. Interestingly, he didn't mention synagogue, but he mentioned every other religion. And if that's not incitement, I'm not too sure what is. And these individuals should have been arrested. But coming back to your original point, if you've got fair-minded people which are attending what are clearly marches headed by, these far-right bigoted individuals, where is this country heading? And I have thought hard and fast about what are the issues with, in particular working class families. And you see that historically, a working class family could do a 40-hour week job, enjoy their weekends, save up money for 2 annual holidays, put food on their table, not worry about the bills. Each of those items are no longer ones that you are going to be able to have without concern and worry, without reducing income somewhere else. And that lifestyle needs to be something that politicians need to address. And we, as your party, are the only political party, I suppose Greens to an extent, are saying we want to go after those that have the most money, the billionaires, the trillionaires.
This sounds like the echoes of Zohran Mamdani's campaign in New York. Absolutely. Who's running for New York mayor, and he's led a fantastic campaign to appeal to the grassroots in New York to say, look, what is it that you want? We want to address your concerns, not the concerns of big business, not the big lobbyists, not the big corporations. And look how well he's doing. And you're right, we need to go back to the basics of addressing people's concerns at ground level.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's very focus driven. So let's not look at the small dinghies. Let's look at the large yachts. Let's not look at people which are coming onto the shores, the very, people fleeing wars, people being persecuted. We are a country that's always been compassionate. And yet, if you think about it, I think it was a few years ago where the image of a young baby with a young toddler, and the face of that young toddler was buried in the sand. It was one of the migrants which arrived and had obviously
from Syria.
But you couldn't see the face.
Yeah.
And that portrait was something that had energized this country. Say, well, this which we are holding in terms of views is absolutely wrong. We need to be compassionate again. Yeah. But it took that image to
stir people up,
to attract the real emotions of the British public. And I think as a nation, we need to focus on those that want to stir hatred, expose them, but also go after those that carry the most amount of wealth. 50 families in this country have more than 50% of the wealth. I mean, how can that be when we have families that are struggling to put 4 square meals on their table for their families?
This is the biggest misconception. That again, is the right-wing media, the right-wing parties, individuals, politicians themselves have propagated that all the problems that this country is facing in terms of housing shortage, the NHS funding crisis, the cost of living crisis, all the issues that we are. How can you scapegoat that poor migrant coming on a rubber dinghy boat, whereas really we know it's the elite politicians, the corporations, the venture capitalists, the bankers, the people who take you to war. These are the people who are screwing you, really.
Yeah. Well, and that is the agenda. So we are living in
Divert
this.
the attention.
We're living in this bubble, and those multimillionaires, billionaires that sit outside the bubble say, no, don't focus on us, don't look at us. Here's a real problem. You need to be looking at this problem, and they've got the resources to push forward the social media. They've got the resources to put people on Sky News and BBC, and ultimately we're just being distracted. When I often say to people that yes, migration, illegal. I don't like to use the word illegal because I think it's wrong. I think when you say unauthorized, until it's been determined as something which is unauthorized, illegal, up until that point, it's unauthorized. And we know that more than 75% of those that arrive on these shores on boats or through the old route behind lorries, they get status because their cases are genuine. They're fleeing persecution. But the most important thing is that in this country, we have more than 750,000 job vacancies. 750,000. And let that be, absorbed for a moment, of which 165,000 are vacancies for unskilled workers.
Which they're not able to fill.
Yeah, which we're not filling. And so when I went in Parliament, there was lobbying, and we have all sorts of people that come and lobby. And there was a group of refugees, and they were saying, just let us work. We don't want to be on benefits. There are people which have got qualifications which have been sitting on the fence because their applications have not been decided for 6 years. Their lives have been put on hold at the expense of taxpayers. And it's not that they want taxpayer bailouts. They've made it plain that we want to work, allow us to work. We've got the job vacancies. So at the moment, the taxpayer is paying somewhere in the region of £5 billion in terms of looking after unauthorized migrants that come to this country, which are 3 to 4%. But if we allow them to work, we would be generating 7 billion. It's a non-brainer. And yet our political establishments cannot do the simple mathematics. And I think it's absolutely outrageous where you have a market which has got vacancies, we're not filling them, and we're not making income, and we are spending. How does that make sense?
You mentioned that the politicians don't get it, but do you think, obviously, without a shadow of doubt, we're living in an era where the public have lost trust in politicians. We're living in an era that the politicians do no longer command that respect and offer that moral leadership to navigate the problems of society. So there's a disconnect between the electorate and the political legislature because of the corruption, which really is quite endemic in our systems.
It is, and one of the biggest problems that you get with that analogy, which is absolutely accurate, is when I was campaigning in the good old days, and that's many years ago, and I would knock on doors, and people say, "Well, we're not interested in politics. We're fed up. We're getting the same of the old, and it's not changing." And that was the problem, because people are so disenfranchised that they don't want to go out and vote. But if you don't go out and vote, then you're only encouraging,
perpetuating the same system.
Yeah, absolutely. The same people get elected, and you're not making a change. You mentioned Mamdani's election. I mean, it's an amazing election which is taking place, and we had Mamdani's team are quite interested in how independents won here, by the way, and so we're trying to reach out and share as much as we can in terms of the strategies that we adopted in the United Kingdom.
Oh, you mean you're in touch with them?
Yeah, so the team, Jeremy Corbyn, has got, I think Zara Sultana was out there as well, but there's a vested interest, and the vested interest is one about honesty, integrity, and speaking truth to power. Speaking truth to power these days is about speaking to media, because, as you say, it's not just what people perceive on the ground, it's also what's been propagated on all mainstream channels who gets the biggest airtime, why they're getting airtime. These sort of debates and arguments are very, very relevant. And when we look at what Mamdani is doing in America, New York, and how he's managed to mobilize, in specific, I think people under the age of 45 primarily, but that movement is such an important movement, because I think, and I hope that Mamdani wins in November, because I think that will have a ripple effect across the whole of the world. And it's important because you've got someone there which you can clearly see his passion, you can clearly see he's honest, and he is so articulate that I think there are very few people that could ever debate him. And he knows his facts, he knows his figures, he's got answers for every question, and he doesn't shy away from answering them. He's very, very direct. Yeah. And that is the type of politics that we want to see.
Yeah, but that's a very rare breed of a politician.
Absolutely. And I think he will be an inspiration to so many of our younger audience, because you need to have that
somebody who can bring trust back into politics.
Absolutely. And, you know, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's working for the average folk. And that is what we must do in this country. We are appealing to, you know, the average family. We're saying, if you want to be able to go on those annual holidays without worrying about your utility bills, you're worried about whether you can get food onto your table, paying for bills, we are looking at rebalancing that. And that's why we are saying, go after the billionaires, go after the ultra rich, go after the large corporations, and fill that black hole. And that must be right, because it's all about equality.
So as a devout Muslim like myself, do you think politicians have to compromise on their religious principles by coming into politics? Does politics demand that?
I don't think it does. I mean, I'm a proud Muslim, and I say that I'm an ambassador for my faith. Wherever I speak, on whatever platform, that is a priority for me, because I know that when I stand up in Parliament, the very first thing that I perceive others to think about is not that he's an MP for Birmingham Perry Bar, but that he's a Muslim MP. And I think it's a responsibility for me to articulate myself in a way that promotes the religion. And I do everything to make sure that there's no negativity. But obviously, that's my view. In terms of entering politics, you don't have to compromise your religion, I think.
But you're probably perhaps lucky you're saying that you're an independent MP.
Yeah.
You're not sort of governed by a party whip, a mainstream party, which can hold you to ransom or, you know, expect you to toe the party line. So if you were, or not necessarily just yourself, but do you think any sort of MP of any faith, let's say a Muslim MP, if they were in a mainstream political party, like the Labour or the Conservative Party, do you think they would then have to compromise on their Islamic principles?
I think you have to look at why you have come into politics. Mm-hmm. What is your reason for being involved in politics? Are you willing to compromise your integrity because you want to get to a certain post? And I think there is examples where people have made certain decisions in order to further their own political career, political aspiration. A classic one is Shabana Mahmood, and I have no concern in giving her as an example, because we know that in 2014 and 15, thereabouts, she was quite active with the pro-Palestinian demonstrations outside supermarkets and saying that you should boycott Israeli products, and rightly so. And, you know, you push forward the clock 10 years, and she's the very same politician now saying that she's going to impede that very freedom of protest, which we believe is the fundamental bedrock of British values, being able to protest, freedom of expression, freedom of speech. She's going to curtail that. And you can see this, drastic shift from someone who was speaking up for human rights violations to someone who wants to ensure that those human rights that you have in Britain are curtailed. And if that is not, in my view, someone who is keen to excel in the political aspirations I'm not too
So
sure
basically,
what.
if she'd continued with those protests outside the supermarkets, she wouldn't have been a home secretary today. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I think that's almost certain. You've got to toe the line. I mean, let's face it. She abstained on the ceasefire vote. Which right-minded individual would have voted for an abstention? I mean, didn't vote, abstained. I'm not going to ask for a ceasefire. I'm not going to not ask for a ceasefire. I mean, where is your moral conscience when you think about how many children have been murdered, how many women, how many people have been maimed in Gaza? Not just Gaza, West Bank. And I'm glad that we've got a ceasefire, but I've said in Parliament many times
That's
that
still not a celebration. Just because it's a ceasefire, what are those people returning back home to? What are they returning back to a home or to rubble?
rubble, and I think it's not a point of celebration, and it's obviously something that's important because we don't want to see any more massacres. But we're going to now hopefully get independent journalists into the region, independent investigators. I think the real horrors have yet to be discovered.
So going back to morality in politics, again, this for me is a very big issue, that we have seen that moral decline and how we need to try and resurrect that trust and morality back into politics, because now the politicians who were voted in for the people are not governing for the people. They are governing on behalf of big corporate interests. As long as there's big money pumped into politics, the lobbyists and the big corporation and the donation and the donors, political donors, you are never going to root out that corruption and that immorality from the politicians. What do you think?
I think that's that's a real problem where you have big donors. Donors are not stupid. They donate for a reason, one expects. It's not just because I align myself to all of these values and I'm very passionate about this political party. There comes a point where I suspect donors think, well, it's payback time, and how are we going to pay back?
It's an
And
investment.
of course it is. It's just like investing in the stock market and hoping that in a few years' time we can go back in and cash in the increase in your market value. And why would you want to invest £1 million in the Labour Party unless there is some underlying reason? I suspect many of the viewers watching this podcast would say, well, yeah, that makes sense. Why would you give £1 million or £2 million or £10 million? Surely there's something that you want in return.
Surely, if you had £1 million to invest, the last thing that you'd want to be investing in is either Labour or the Conservative Party, because I see these two parties in this perpetual decline now. They are no longer the two main political parties of the UK. Well, they probably are at the moment, but things are changing so rapidly now. So do you think this is the end of the two-party system?
Absolutely. And in the words of Andrew Mitchell, who's a member of Parliament for Sutton Coldfield, I had a chat with him over a cup of coffee, and he is very experienced. He's been around for a very long time. And his view was that we're no longer going to be in an era where it's a two main political party or a three main political party movement. He genuinely believes that at the next general election, there are going to be 5 political parties.
Your party being one of them.
Absolutely. And he believes that there will be no single party with an overall majority. And that is where our party, or your party, will be instrumental. And I think that we will have real impact on British politics. We've had real impact even with 5 MPs as the Independent Alliance. Let's not forget that we have held the government to account, not just on international matters, on national matters, on local matters. So I've been raising the bin strikes during Prime Minister question time, during ministerial question time. In fact, I think I've spoken about the bin strikers and the issues in Birmingham more than any other Birmingham MP. In relation to national issues, we've been raising child benefit, the PIP, and what the government wanted to do in terms of removing £5 billion that would have impacted especially my constituents in inner city areas. So we have been very vocal. And I'm not going to mention the Labour MPs which approached me, but they said, we're glad that you were in Parliament. Because of you, and because you've been so vocal on some of the topics, international Gaza and nationally on other topics, we have been getting thousands of emails from our constituents saying,
Did you not reply to them what was wrong with your mouth? Could you not speak up?
Well, here's the thing, because it's clear that it's pressure from the political party.
But then that is a testament of that individual's own character.
Well, it is, and as I say before, you got to reflect on why are you in politics in the first place? Are you there to toe the political line because you want to achieve something as an individual, or are you there to truly represent the people that you serve? And it's a sad case, but a lot of politicians are there not because they value the people they serve, but because they value the party they are slaves to. And they want to see themselves excel. They want to see themselves get into ministerial positions. And, my view is that the most important thing you should do is the right thing, because we're all going to die one day. Nobody is going to live forever. And I reflect on death. If there's one thing which I've learned out of politics, or one thing which I take away that has given me the ability to earn as a Muslim reward and to do the right thing, is the attendance of janazah, the funerals. You're getting reward for that. But most importantly, it allows you to remain you self-checking. Am I doing the right thing? Because you're constantly thinking about the hereafter and what are you doing for that.
Wow. And that's why I admire politicians like Zara Sultana, who could have continued to stay in that comfortable position of being a mainstream Labour Party MP, but she had a conscience to be able to, stand up for the things that she believed in and fight the very party that was probably trying to repress her voice.
Yeah, so anyone that takes a moral stance must be credited, and we see politicians leave political parties for various reasons, but there's no doubt that Zara has been absolutely vocal when it came to the issue of the genocide, and she's asked questions of Keir Starmer in a way that no individual would ask, certainly being part of that political movement. So if you're part of Labour, which other MPs have been so robust in their questioning and asking for yes and no answers and interrupting your own Prime Minister? And that's a testament to
that leads to my next question. Why are politicians so afraid of the Israel lobby that they cannot get themselves to even call out a genocide when it's being played out right in front of their own eyes?
Well, I don't know. You look at Birmingham, we've had Labour councillors rallying around Lucy Powell and promoting her for deputy leader, and I'm looking at the local councillors here in Birmingham and thinking, do you not know that she is a member of the Labour Friends of Israel, where a rogue nation which has been identified as committing a genocide by all the international organizations, and here they are celebrating this deputy leadership role in Birmingham, of all cities.
Sorry, where's she come from? Has she been parachuted in or something?
Yeah, so this is a competition because of the saga around Angela Rayner, and so they're obviously going through the election of the new deputy leader in the Labour Party, and I'm shocked that you've got people that have totally lost their moral conscience. They're totally are ignorant to the fact that a genocide has been confirmed by United Nations assessments, by international organizations, and yet they are supporting the very same people that have been, in my view, complicit in what took place. And it's something that will haunt them in the future, I'm confident. But at present, they are just simply oblivious to what has happened, and for them to almost sideline a genocide in 2025, is an absolute disgrace, I think. So when we look at what AIPAC does,
Yeah.
almost every main influential politician in America
Yeah.
seems to get funding. A
Sorry,
lot of
before
them.
you go any further, would you say the Labour Friends of Israel is the AIPAC's version of the UK?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you look at some of these politicians, how do they get funding? Where's the money come from? You look at where, and the beauty about AI these days is that it takes away all the painstaking research you would need to do.
Yeah.
You can use it, I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages of AI. I think it's a brilliant tool if you use it for the right purposes. Just search up some of the MPs and have a look at where their funding packages came from in their electioneering. And
Well, you've obviously done that. So you must have yielded some nice surprises you can share with us.
Well, in actual fact, I haven't. And shall I tell you why I haven't?
Right.
Because when you see politicians that form the cabinet, they're very, very pro-Israel. And no one, when you look at what's taken place in the Gaza Strip, in the West Bank, in the continuous building of new towns, despite the United Nations saying these are illegal occupation, these are illegal territories, but they push ahead. And yet there is not a single member of the cabinet that can condemn what's taking place, up until the point where it is so blatant, they are very, very silent. And what is the factor? What is the influential factor that keeps them silent?
The hand that's feeding them.
And I say no more. And it's not just, and I suspect it's not just what feeds them in a physical sense, as in direct donations. I think there are other
political promotion.
Well, political promotions, and there may be other influences that we're just simply oblivious to. I mean, Epstein seems to be a key figure in a lot of political establishments, whether it's United Kingdom or America or any other European countries. But they are clearly not representing the views of the people they serve. That is for sure. And I say to people that you can we have 650 MPs in Parliament, and okay, the Speaker obviously doesn't participate in the debates. But let's imagine for a moment, 650 MPs, and they're all saying the same thing, that it is raining outside. And yet the average person out there is looking out the front room window and saying, well, actually, it's not raining.
Depends what part of the country it is.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm just using this as a crude example.
Yeah.
But 650 are saying it's absolutely raining. Is that what I said to start off with? Did I say raining or not? Yeah. So they're saying it's raining. And that one person, you can imagine, and there's scientific tests in relation to this. I don't know if you watch on social media these days, but there are all sorts of pranks where people go into lifts and there's three people which they're all
in on that.
Yeah, all in on it. And what they do is start looking in a different direction, and that one person originally hesitant, but eventually looks in the same direction they're looking in.
Yeah.
It's human instinct.
Yeah.
In the same bizarre way, and it's not bizarre really, but if everybody of responsibility, accountability are saying one thing, and you do not align with that, you start doubting your own assessment. That one person is thinking, even though I'm not seeing any raindrops, if 650 are saying it must be
right.
raining.
Yeah.
And one MP stands up and says, you know what? It's not raining. And that's the truth.
And he's ostracized.
Well, it doesn't matter whether he's ostracized or not, but he's given his view. All of a sudden, that one person who is thinking that actually it's not raining starts to align himself with you. And that's where you get that movement. That's when you realize the hypocrisy, the people that are out there to promote the false propaganda, the false narrative. So when people were saying to me that what can an independent MP do? What can one person do? I'm telling you that one voice is such an important voice that it can mobilize tens of thousands of people. because it's all about alignment. If you speak the truth and you can demonstrate why you are saying certain things, you can build a momentum. And that's what this Your Party is all about.
You see, that's why in our team, in terms of my podcast, we talk about prophetic leadership, the prophetic way of life. We have to go back to the roots of the way that our beloved Prophet, peace be upon him, enacted their leadership. It was all based on truth, fairness, justice.
Absolutely.
This is what we need to bring back, even into the politics of the UK, the fairness, the justice, the compassion, and the truth. These are the things that which are the ingredients which are missing at the moment.
It is, and let's face it. I mean, the drive to frighten people about Islam, the drive to, the burning of the Quran by that individual outside the
That's right.
Turkish embassy.
His conviction's been overturned.
It has, sadly. And here's another, I think it's, the politically motivated judiciary. We know that in this country, we've been very proud of the judiciary being absolutely independent. In fact, senior members, it used to be known as the House of Lords, is now known as the Supreme Court. But senior judges used to be positioned in the House of Lords. And they were moved to a new building and now called the Supreme Court, because the perception must be true in that there is a separation between judges, people that make law, and people that implement law. And when we look at what took place here, the burning of the Quran, in my view, was clearly incitement. And we wouldn't dare, as Muslims, burn any other, whether the Bible or the Torah, and we certainly wouldn't do it in front of an embassy. We just wouldn't engage in it. I've yet to see someone, a practicing Muslim, burn another scripture. In fact, we believe in the First Testaments and documentations that were passed down by prophets.
There's no compulsion in Islam. We respect other people's religion. We do not mock their religion in the sense that in a public way that the Quran is being burnt and Muslims being humiliated and their sentiments insulted.
And when we look at one of the reasons why there are so many Muslims that are reverting to Islam is because those are the individuals that have actually picked up the text and have actually given due consideration without a biased and prejudiced view. They've gone in there with open eyes, open views. And that is dangerous to many out there, which don't want people to understand Islam. So let's frighten them. Let's ignite that fear in them. And the burning of the Quran was, in my view, an incitement to religious hatred. At the magistrates, he was convicted. It went to the Crown Court, and of all people, Robert Jenrick decided
to go and sit in on the hearing.
To sit on the hearing. And yes, we respect, judges' decisions, and obviously as a barrister, I may not agree with the decision, but you have to respect it. It's a high authority. It's part of the judiciary. But I do not understand why the judge felt that with all the chanting that went around at the time, if someone had burnt the Torah outside an Israeli embassy,
straight away you would have been in prison for anti-Semitism.
Yeah, making the comments, that would have been undoubtedly incitement of religious hatred, and he would have been convicted. He would have been convicted, and without a shadow of a doubt. And so it's a sad state of affairs, to be frank, where Robert Jenrick, the very same person who came into my constituency and mentioned the color of your skin and then used the word integration. And I thought to myself for a moment, and I thought, well, what are you trying to suggest? Are you trying to suggest that Britishness can only be measured by the color of your skin? And it's these nuances that I'm not racist, but the undertones And the dog whistling is shocking.
So what's your message to Robert Jenrick?
I think him and his family, his wife and children, should move into Aston and Handsworth. I think as someone who wants to profess to be a responsible politician
And not racist.
yeah,
Just
and not
come
racist.
and live amongst
Yeah,
the people in
I
Handsworth.
I think given that he's so proud of this concept of integration, I think him and his wife and his children, grandparents, if he's got, if they're still living, they should all move into Aston and Handsworth,
Integrate into the community.
and be the role model to push this integration agenda. It's ludicrous, isn't it? Really, it's absurd. So if you go to let's say a town which is predominantly white, what Robert Jenrick is saying is that we now need to move coach loads of
White
people of non-white color into that community because it needs to be integrated. It's not integrated well enough. I mean, the absurdity of what he said, it's just outrageous that someone could come in there. I mean, first of all, Kemi Badenoch should have withdrawn the whip. He should be suspended, right? Especially
But she equally says some of the most stupid things.
as a person of color,
Yeah.
the fact that he used the word white faces, she's doubled down and said, well, actually, that wasn't the whole of what he said. And let's not strip it of context. I'm sorry, Kemi. You don't need context when someone's mentioned the color of your skin and then in the same paragraph mentions slum. 14 years of austerity under the Conservative rule. Another 12 years of austerity in Birmingham with Labour-run council. Bin strikes, and that's why Robert Jenrick was in my constituency, and he breached parliamentary rules. Actually, he was discourteous, and I'm going to raise that as a matter of complaint against him because you ought to tell another parliamentarian's convention, it's part of parliamentary rules, before you enter their patch if you're going to do some work or if you're there for a particular reason. And he was there to report the bin strikes and the impact of that. So the gaslighting is something that we need to shut down. And the fact that he's not been suspended, the fact that Kemi Badenoch has supported his rhetoric is a disgrace to the Conservatives.
Final question. I've asked this to many people. Obviously, you're not the one of those people who are saying this, but what do you think that the far right are referring to when they say our British values are being threatened? They are threatening, our British values. What do we mean? What do they mean by these British values?
I don't think they understand what British values are. I mean, we have communities that display community cohesion. They get on well with each other. Getting up in the morning, going to work, working with friends and colleagues, coming back home, looking after your neighbour, that chat over the garden fence, sharing food amongst your neighbours. What are British values? There is no definition of British values. I think British values are very simple. It's about being just. It's about being compassionate. It's about being fair. I mean, these are values, and I think when you watch Tommy Robinson's march, and I think it was Nico who went and approached one of the attendees and said, "What's your favourite dish?" And he said, roast lamb. And he said, what's your second favourite dish? I don't know if you watched it. He said, is it curry? He goes, yeah, it's a curry. I mean, when you look at the narrative that's being pushed, let's not talk about multiculturalism. Let's talk about multiracial. I mean, the spin. And people don't understand any of these terminologies. People just understand that being a good, decent human being is British values.
Absolutely.
That's what it comes down to.
The funniest one I'll finish on is there's a picture on social media, a whole row of these white, so-called far-right racist people who have gone onto this march with the Union St. George's flag wrapped around them, lining up against a wall in daylight, urinating. And with the message saying, is this the British values that they're trying to protect?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, let's not make no mistake. There were a lot of bigoted individuals attending that, and well, the best one I saw was the Union Jack flag and the St George's flag customers sitting outside the curry marquee that was feeding them pakoras and samosas. I mean, that's you know, I think there needs to be a movement to reclaim the flag.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe that. It's been used in a way to create tensions, and it's not the way that we would expect the British flag to be. We're all patriotic. We're British. You know, I'm a proud British Muslim, right? With my ethnicity in Azad Kashmir. You know, I can't devolve away from that. But I'm proud of all of those things. I'm proud of British, I'm proud of Muslim, I'm proud I've got heritage in Azad Kashmir, and I think I've got the best of so many worlds. And that gives me my strength in terms of my faith, it gives me strength in terms of my life experiences. And we shouldn't shy away from that, you know. And I often say to people, and we'll finish on this note because I know that we're barred for time, but my forefather worked after the Second World War. He worked in steel factories, like many people that were invited, the key word being invited into this great nation. We were invited after the Second World War, where our forefathers worked night and day. They spilt their blood, they spilt their sweat in making Britain great. No one, but no one, is going to say to me, get out of my country. This is my country, and I've earned it. I've earned it through my forefathers, just like so many second, third, and fourth British Kashmiris or British Indians or whatever you want to call them. Their forefathers worked, and let's not take them away. And our forefathers fought in the Second World War. I mean, if you go into some of the European countries, you'll see thousands of graves of those Indian army personalities that died in defending the rights and fighting the Nazis. So
We're actually going to be doing a podcast on that soon, about the number of Muslims from Azad Kashmir that served in the Second World War.
And that is so important, so that we need to brush up on our own history, including me, so that we can talk about the contribution that people from Azad Kashmir have made in defending the rights that we now take for liberty.
All praise to the Almighty Lord that you now have been given the opportunity to serve that very same British public like your forefathers, but obviously at a higher sort of political chambers in the legislature of this country. So may that success continue. Jazakallah, may Allah bless you for coming, and we look forward to speaking to you again in a future episode, no doubt.
Inshallah. Thank you ever so much for having me again.
Jazakallah.
Thank you.